Practice these things, immerse yourself in them, so that all may see your progress. Keep a close watch on yourself and on the teaching. Persist in this, for by doing so you will save both yourself and your hearers. 1 Timothy chapter 4, verses 15 and 16. Hello, ladies. Welcome to Homemakers Radio. I'm hoping to speak enough that you can get some things done today while you listen. I just love to watch the videos, the Clean With Me videos and the Princess Home videos where they show different arrangements of furnishings and decor. But you have to stop and watch, and we all have so much to do, especially some of us who are now entering full summer and the harvest, and some of us are still watering, and there's so much to do. There's barely time to sit down. And today I'm going to show you my teacup before you go and get ready. And this looks like sweet pea. Isn't it pretty? And it's an antique, and it's from Clarence, China, made in England. I just love to read that, made in England. And I have quite a few pieces of china made in England. And I'd really like to see more of that. And also, I'd like to see some china someday that's made in USA that's really pretty. Now there's a little picture on the inside. That's your special bonus for this teacup. And today I have a lot to talk to you about. I'm going to do a little bit of the refinement school and go homeschool you a little bit, and going to talk about the homemaking and the appearance. We'll start with the appearance. If you're not dressed and you're not ready, please go. I think a lot of you just don't like to look at yourself in the mirror first thing in the morning, so you just neglect it. And sometimes when you find out as a homemaker that it's going to be just the same as it was yesterday, cleaning up the same messes, creating the same things all day long, and you probably aren't going to get any acclaim for it, and no one's going to hold a special awards dinner for you, that it's easier not to get dressed. And sometimes the things that we need to do the most are the things that we neglect. So dressing is so important, and if it weren't important, then we wouldn't be reading about it so much in the Bible. God dressed Adam and Eve in garments. So and you'll see garments throughout the Bible as a figure of speech, garments of salvation, and the garments that were laid at the feet of Saul. And you see this word garment coming along a lot in the Bible. We don't often want to see it. We think the Bible is only about your soul, but it is also about the physical world that we live in and how that affects your life. And so if you've been isolated and you found out as a homemaker that this is not going to be a group approval type job, then the best thing that you can do is to do this simple thing that costs nothing, practically nothing, to shower and get dressed and prepare your appearance. And in doing so, you show your preference and your taste and your eye for what's good, what's appropriate, and what's beautiful. And I know a lot of you can do it. So the first thing you need to do is get dressed, and it makes the people around you feel honored. Even if this is your day off from working outside the home, if you will make it a special day and get dressed, just think it's the day you don't have to wear your uniform or your lab coat or whatever. So get dressed and show that the home is more important to you. And it's your reasonable service to get dressed. So if you've not done that, now's the time to go and do that. And it makes the people around you feel honored. And so I'd like to move on to the home. And this is where we say things like, if you're a good, like Harriet said in Wives and Daughters to Molly, when she was going to the wedding of her father, if you're a good girl and suffer yourself to be led, you might manage it. I never did, but you could. And I'm not quite sure that's the quote. I didn't bring Wives and Daughters with me over here today, so I won't be reading from it. But it's the way that homemaking is. If you're a good girl and suffer yourself to be led or taught, you might manage it. And so I always say, if you are in a turmoil, or if for some reason your mind is not settled and you tend to be walking around in circles or feeling that way, first thing to do is the sanitation. That is the first thing to do because health is the most important, and that will focus you. So make sure your dishes are clean, your laundry's done, your bathrooms are clean, and anything that needs to be sanitized, the doorknobs, and clean the windows, anything like that. That'd be the first thing that you would do after you got dressed is your routine. Besides getting if you have a morning meal, getting that ready. But that somehow jump starts you. If you get the sanitation part taken care of, then the rest of it seems a little easier and goes a little more quickly. And so in homemaking, you have to vary your work. I might have mentioned this, that you're going to have some sit-down jobs and some walking around stand-up jobs, because you can get very weary and your body will get out of alignment if you're on your feet all the time. And while I was going through my books, I ran across the one I had on reflexology that showed how the feet are related to every part of your body. Everything is connected in some way, and why it's so important to take care of your feet. And I do not mean that you have to wear ugly footwear. You can wear quite pretty footwear that's good for your feet, good for your arches, good for your toes, and walk properly. And I mentioned this in my previous video for something for you to try in the way we walk. You know, we've been walking flat-footed for so long because our shoes have become so thick and we don't feel the impact of it. But try walking on your heels and then the balls of your feet on your toes, and see, that also balances and slows you down a little bit. You might want to research that a little bit and find out if that is a helpful way to walk and if that might help you. And a homemaker especially has to take care of her body, because this is a very hard job. It's never done, and I think with people being home more, there's not going to be such a doubt about what women do all day. I don't think you're going to hear people mocking the homemaking anymore. So today I'd like to talk a little bit about your home and your garden and how important that is, that you make the home into a comfort zone. Make the home into something that you would like, something beautiful that pleases your senses and would make a place that you would like to come home to. Think of, so many people can't go out, they go on their vacations anymore, and they think of these luxury spots they'd like to go to. Why not just use the money and buy yourself the things that would create the luxury of your own home? I know around here everybody likes to go camping, but camping actually costs quite a bit of money. You have to pay a fee to go to a campground if you don't go to some of the BLM land, which is Bureau of Land Management. And if you go to the BLM land, then the camping is free, but it's still costly. You know, to get there, you've got to have all your equipment. You can't be caught without the things that you need, because that could interfere with the pleasure of going. And so I suggested to some people who decided not to go camping this year, get yourself some things that you use the money you would have spent on camping to create more comfort for you in your home, whether it's new bath towels, new sheets, new tea set, or a coffee maker, anything that would make the home a place that you would like to go and create that hospitality atmosphere. And so if you haven't started on your homemaking today, I would suggest you go to your kitchen first. By the way, I have put the Fly Lady on my blog, and she comes up every now and then, and you can see what her subject is and go to her blog. And also on her site, she has a schedule and she has zones. Like for 1 week, it will be the living room will be your zone, and you'll be doing your daily work too, like your dishes and your laundry and stuff, but then you will work extra on these zones. I'm not ready to go into that yet because I'm still got that room to do and some other things, but I'm making progress, and I'm feeling better about it because I did what I told you to do. And remember, I said in the beginning of some of these videos that a good teacher or leader never asks anything of his followers that he would not be willing to do himself. And for instance, something he would recommend and not do it himself. So what I did was I included making an appointment. So every day at 4 o'clock, after I've done everything else I need to do, all the watering, all the farming, and by the way, ladies, you'll be happy to know that I got myself that wagon that I had been lusting after at the Tractor Supply store. And it's vinyl on metal, but the vinyl wagon is wonderful because it won't rust, and it tips. You can pick it up and tip it into the trash heap or the leaves, and I just find it so much better. And I prefer a wagon than a wheelbarrow, because a wheelbarrow I have to lift it, but a wagon, just I pull it and it follows me. And so after I got all that done, I was looking at my watch, and by 4 o'clock I said, oops, I've got an appointment. And I went back to the storage room, and I worked on it until I didn't feel that I could do any more that day. And I wanted you to make sure that you make an appointment with yourself for some of the things that you're putting off. So if you want to go into your kitchen and get that cleaned up, this is a good time to listen to this video. I find the kitchen the most complicated and daunting, because it isn't just a matter of putting the dishes in the dishwasher or putting them away. There's that whole thing that surrounds it. You've got to clean the tops of the surfaces. You have to clean the little table if you've got one in there. And then the floor. You have to clean the floor. Then you have to put the trash out. It's just one of the biggest jobs. And that's why I think Fly Lady has you start in the kitchen, because once you get that done, you're encouraged. What I like to do is finish a room and then go back and look at it to get more encouragement while I work on another grueling job. Like Emma said, there's a grueling job to be done. So in this video, I'm going to try to keep on the sunny side, and keep you on the sunny side. And I'm going to give you a suggestion of something that I ran across yesterday, because yesterday I always iron after I've done the laundry, because there are a few things that just need that extra pressing, and particularly Mr. S's shirts that he wears in public. I like to iron them. And so while I was ironing, I got out an old pattern that was a bit mangled, and I pressed the envelope, and I pressed the pattern pieces. And one thing that I found very handy for me, for some of you sewists, is to take the pattern pieces and separate them, press them separately with the label of what it is on the front. Apron front, view 3 and 4. That way, I'm fond of taking pieces out and joining them to other patterns. That way I can go through it, and I don't have to undo this big swath of paper that's all folded up together. This big swath of tissue paper that they make the patterns on. And I just pull out like if it says sleeve, that's handy, because I have my favorite sleeves, and I attach them to different garments or different patterns. So that's what I did. And then whenever I press or iron, maybe once a week when I get out my clothing that needs to be pressed, I'll get out an old pattern and check that out and press that. I wanted to let you know about that little hint there. I hope it helps somebody. And today, of course, my notes are a total wreck, but I was looking at them, and I just jot down thoughts as I go about my work. And so I thought this morning I'll get up and I'll organize these notes, and I realized it was going to take me hours to write it all down, so I'm not going to be able to do that. So I have a note here about dressing, and it is a way of showing thankfulness, and it creates a pleasing picture for yourself and for others. I know a lot of people do think that it's vain or something like that, but think of yourself, how much more cheered you are if you see a lady in a grocery store or just anywhere, and she's taken a little extra care of herself. It shows dignity, doesn't it? And yesterday we had our worship service, which was wonderful. We never quit having church here, and we're in farm country, and so the church had mutually decided we would not quit. So we never did. We kept up our worship services, and God blessed us all. Everyone is in great health. Everyone is seems to be prospering, seems to be doing well, and good things happening. So we're very pleased with that. Now, one thing you can do when you're doing your homemaking and you get into an area that you know is so isolating and you're not going to have company. Nobody's going to come in and talk to you while you clean up some of those messes, and maybe you don't want them in your laundry room or in your back porch. Maybe you'd like to do that alone. As I turn on that Sesamante, S-E Sesamante, the videos where they play where they sing the a cappella hymns, and one of the reasons that I recommend those is that you can hear the words and concentrate on the beauty of the human voice, which God created for us to praise Him. And so I will listen to some of those songs, and the one that I placed on my blog, I'll listen to that a lot and see if I can memorize it so that I can sing it myself. And that keeps me company. When we were kids growing up, any difficult task was made short work by singing all the verses we knew of hymns. And down that long road from the highway to our homestead, it kept us focused and it kept us happy and kept us from growing weary. I think it was a fourth of a mile that we had to walk to our home, and we always came home happy that way. And the people around you feel honored if you look good. Now, of course, I'm going to put an apron over this when I'm in my kitchen, and I hope you will do that too, because you'll find when you look in your apron where you're getting soiled the most, and that's what you want to avoid. You'll ruin your clothes. So the apron, you'll notice it's probably the top part here and the waist part where a lot of the soiling comes from. So aprons are a good idea, and if you can afford it, get one for every day and put a clean one out every day. And today I have something to read to you. I received an interesting message on Skype from a very old friend, and I've known her. I'm sure she must have been 10 years old or 8 years old when I first met her. And she was saying, and she lives in Australia, and she had written me a note on Skype about how it is a dream of hers to become a homemaker, but that it is very difficult in a society where any kind of attempt to do it means that you won't get your retirement, or you won't get the kind of support that you need, and in general most people are not very supportive of it. But it can be done, and I wanted to read to you, and it reminded me of Taylor Caldwell. Now she, I think her name was Janet something, but she wrote several books, and one of them was called Testimony of Two Men, made into a miniseries many years ago, and the other one was about the Apostle Paul, Great Lion of God, or something like that. And she was a British woman, and I believe she lived in America. But her mother was British. And so she wrote a little booklet, and I have found that in some of my old books, but I'm using I found it online also, and I'll give you a link to that. Taylor Caldwell, Feminism Spoiled Nature's Great Con. Now, that was a figure of speech. I let somebody read that one time. I had this little book, and it said, they're spoiling Eve's great con. Well, this person that read it was just, really, is homemaking a con game? You know, she was using it as a figure of speech, meaning Eve had it pretty good as a homemaker and a wife and a mother, and then feminism came in and spoiled it all when Eve was doing pretty well. It's unfortunate she used that, but at the time in the 1940s when she wrote it, everybody understood it and didn't object to the word, because they understood figures of speech a lot better than we do today. The left especially has a hard time with figures of speech and with understanding meanings behind phrases and words, and they misunderstand humor, they misunderstand irony, and this is a big problem today. We can't have our figures of speech because everyone's so afraid of offending someone who doesn't understand them. But I'm going to read this to you because while you do your homemaking, by the way, I hope you dress, hope you had your cup of tea, and I hope that you wrote down a list. You can't really write your list while you're listening to me, I don't think, but I hope that you did that. Okay, so Taylor Caldwell 1900 to 1985. That was her life, born in 1900. A British-born American novelist, is a prime example of the communist control of American culture. See, that's what we're going through now. Is there are two sides. If you're listening to the X-22 report, you'll see this. There are two sides. One is the state. The other is our president, who believes in freedom and life and dislikes communism terribly. And the state senators and the state governors have shut down their states and turned us into a communist country, making mandates of where you can walk and where you can stand. They're putting arrows everywhere on the street and on the sidewalks and trying to regulate you like you were a herd of animals. And so we're experiencing that, and then also confining you to your homes and fining you if you are seen somewhere in some of these states. This is communism that we're experiencing, and hopefully everyone is going to see it. It was allowed to see if the governors would do their jobs, and it was also used to expose these people as the Marxists that they really were, so they will not win the next election unless they cheat. So if you want to go listen to the X-22 report, they'll tell you more about it. But I'm not concerned, and I think that if you're a homemaker in your home, your life didn't change much in all this, because we're pretty confined anyway. But we are concerned about our freedom, and I'll be reading more to you about that, how you can be concerned without listening to all the hype of the news and being upset and being afraid. And one thing that these classes I'm teaching you on homeschool or on refinement will do will free you from the constant fear of poverty and illness and all these things that they're teaching us to fear. So I'm going to read this about Taylor Caldwell. She was a British-born American novelist and is a prime example of the communist control of American culture. Despite being, now let me explain this to you, that from the beginning of any nation that's established under God with godly principles is always going to be a target and under attack from the enemies of freedom. That's just the way it is. That's the way the people of Israel were in the Old Testament. They were always being enslaved and always having to fight for their religious nation. And so this is what is happening here. And so despite being one of the most successful writers of the mid-20th century and the author of 30 novels, there are no biographies or movies about her or her work. The reason being, of course, that she was a conservative and that she believed in God. Our liberal cultural commissars flushed her down the memory hole. All art now must be politically correct because we live in a de facto communist society. Taylor Caldwell was anti-communist, anti-feminist, and the following quote of hers attests: "There is no solid satisfaction in any career for a woman like myself. There is no home, no true freedom, no hope, no joy, no expectation for tomorrow, no contentment. I would rather cook a meal for a man and bring him his slippers and feel myself in the protection of his arms than have all the citation and awards and honors I have received worldwide, including the ribbon of Legion of Honor and my property and my bank accounts. They mean nothing to me, and I am only one among millions of sad women like myself." In the article below, written in 1970, she laments that feminists are ruining nature's great con, where, and I explained it, that's a figure of speech, ladies. It's so interesting to let something fall on the ears of an immature person, and they'll go, oh, are we conning people? You know, it's just so interesting how people cannot fathom figures of speech or parts of speech that are supposed to be like somewhat sarcastic or anything like that. They take everything so wrong. She laments that feminists are ruining nature's great con where men provided for wives and children. I fear that men are beginning to suspect that we women conned them through the centuries. Now, of course, that again is humor. That's figure of speech, ladies. I'm going to try to fix my volume here. I fear they are asking themselves, to women's terrible hurt, why they should support an able-bodied woman who can earn a good living too, and why should they be responsible for providing a home for women. Men provided a home for women because women raised their children. Being a wife and mother was respected and a necessary role in society before the communist cockroaches destroyed it. If you know what a cockroach is, I feel so sorry for you, because I do. I lived in Texas for a long time, and the cockroaches were something they hide in the dark. And you'll open your cabinet door or your shelf, and they run, and you'll have somebody come in and get rid of them all, and then they come back. They're everywhere, and they're sneaky. Unless a woman has exceptional talent, she finds her highest expression as a wife and mother. Women used to empower men by being in their care in exchange for his love and fidelity. Love is not free. It must be earned. Women earn lifelong love by nurturing husband and children. The communists convince them they can find permanent love by sex appeal or career achievement. People forget that the communist goal is societal destruction. It's, what did I call it? It was, oh goodness, it's when they try to change your culture, change your, it's called social engineering. Feminism brainwashed women to seek power instead of love. Now everyone is suffering. A woman was created by nature to bear children. Now many are rotting on the vine. Below, Taylor Caldwell relates how she wanted to be a traditional woman, but society would not permit it. And many people are in that situation, and it's going to take a lot of conviction. It's going to take a lot of determination and bravery to buck that system, but it can be done. So she calls it, feminism is the real enslavement of women. Here's what she says. The left, alas, is now running yet another liberation movement. This one championing females who believe that the male sex has somehow done the ladies wrong. The members of the front say that they want all the spoils the boys appear to be getting out of life. They're quite mad, of course. What these girls are about to do is ruin the biggest con game and the most ancient one of humanity has ever imposed on one another since Eve invented it. I'm just jealous myself, having been deprived by circumstances from getting into that game. Alas, alas, alas. But I've stood on the sidelines and seethed with envy, and now I hope, I say with a grin over clenched teeth, that the liberation girls will get exactly what they want. It's all they deserve. As for myself, I am plenty happy with my two beautiful daughters, that they are in the game and enjoying every minute of it, she means at home, and wouldn't even dream of female liberation. I brought them up to appreciate their blessings and to shut their mouths around their husbands for fear the boys would catch on and demand liberation for themselves, which is exactly the calamity these rampant females in the liberation movement are going to precipitate. God help the contented women who will be their victims. I missed my chance. At 18, I fell desperately in love with a true man, a man of strength and masculine vitality and courage. He was attracted to me, too. But then, one night, he said to me, Janet, you aren't the gentle little woman my mother was. My father worshipped her, and no wonder. Now, that's another figure of speech. No one worships anybody, but that was a figure of speech in the day. You are too strong yourself and too independent for me. There'd be conflict in the house, he meant, if she worked. You wouldn't be satisfied just to be taken care of. You'd want to do something on your own and be a partner to me. It's just no use. I was struck dumb at this horrifying statement. I wasn't very articulate then. He gently picked up my hands and shook his head at the old calluses as I gently put them down. I wanted to cry out to him, But I want to be like your mother. I want you to take care of me and deliver me from my hateful daily job. I want you to cherish me. I want only to be your wife and have your children and keep your house. I don't want a career or anything else. I just want you. But I couldn't say it. I had no words. My rearing silenced me, and so I never saw him again. But I saw the creeps all right. They hung on me like leeches. Charity prevents me from elaborating on the matter. After all, a girl has to marry someone, doesn't she, when her yearning for love and protection overcomes her. And believe me, unless she is a liberated commie, that yearning is natural and heartbreaking. So here's a little section called Men's Liberation. I fear that men are beginning to suspect that we women con them through the ages. And then she goes on to say, why can't women be architects and bricklayers and plumbers and stonemasons and lawyers and doctors and businesswomen too, and pick up a fat bank account to be inherited by their husbands, instead of just the opposite? Why should a man give his ex-wife alimony and child support checks when she is just as capable, if not more so, of rolling up her sleeves and getting on the 8 o'clock bus of a morning for an arduous day in the factory or the office? After all, men whisper among themselves, I have heard that women in Russia are treated exactly as men, and are farm laborers plowing and seeding and harvesting, and they manhandle big machines in factories, empty garbage and shovel snow, learn to be bricklayers and steel workers as well as doctors and lawyers, serve in the armies, drive trucks, wear felt pants, dig sewers and lay pipes, clean chimneys and work in the forest, and do the heaviest of manual labor. Men, in short, are smacking their lips for the first time in history, are readying themselves to be exploiters in their turn, to be the soft, gentle creature of the house, the soother of exhaustion, the serene person who has nothing to worry about in his pleasant life. Mom's out there, after all, plugging and fulfilling herself, and why should Pop worry? He's had it coming to him since Eve. This is all tongue-in-cheek, ladies. It is a woman's nature to make a sanctuary of love and delight in her home. That's true. This is the true career for women. Alas, alas, that so many multitudes of women are now forced or choose to abandon that career at home and to become imitation men in society. The true men won't marry them, the creeps that throng about them. I will reap that bitterness I have had to reap, although I never wanted a career, never wanted to be stalwart. I just wanted to be a woman. You really can't change human nature, and the instincts of that nature, for good or evil. I know a prosperous young man in New York, in his early 30s, who has a pad or a penthouse and is up to date on everything, including ladies' liberation. He highly approves of it. He told me it was time that women stopped being parasites. I heard that a lot, this word parasites. I'm wondering if it's coming out of the universities. Because the young people would say women at home are parasites, and most of us, we have a deep, sensitive conscience, and we don't want to be parasites, being thought of as being a parasite. Of course, if you get welfare, nobody accuses you of being a parasite, but if you lived off of the salary that your husband made, you're accused of being a parasite. And women should be worked to the day they drop dead or retired, as men do, and not expect a man to support them. This man is very enthusiastic, too, about women's sexual liberation, and always manages to get a girl who will heartily agree with him. He belongs to the Key Club, you know the kind I mean. When I was in New York recently, he invited me to meet his newest girlfriend at the club. The girl happened to be a member of an advertising agency, smart, pretty, cookie with swinging hair and bright cheeks and eyes and good manners, and an engaging way. Only her eyes were vulnerable and soft and tender as she gazed upon my young masculine friend. The love light shone in those eyes, deep and passionate and devoted. I thought those two hit it off wonderfully well, and I thought, too, what a wonderful marriage they would make, and what handsome and intelligent children they would have. After all, the girl came from a good family, had a master's degree in publications and advertising, and money of her own, and I could plainly see that marriage was fixed in her own ardent wishes and hopes. When she went to the powder room, I said to my sophisticated, progressive, and with it young pal, "Are you going to marry Sally soon?" He looked absolutely shocked. Suddenly the primitive man was there, and not a modern man in a dinner jacket and a black tie in a Key Club. And he was aghast. He said, "Excuse me, but you can't be serious, can you? Sally's all right, but after all, she's a modern girl." Um, then I still stared at him cynically. He got a little mad. "Let's face it, the liberated girls," he said, "have made their own choice, and they can live with that. But if they think we are going to marry them, they're due for an awakening. No man wants a woman who's been out on the town with everyone. When we marry, we don't want a modern woman." And he laughed again, "although we encourage the women to be liberated." Sally came back, glowing at the boyfriend, her heart in her eyes. No one ever told Sally she was being used, and that her womanhood had been cheapened and degraded by her sister women in the name of liberation. Sure, Sally had her identity, as they wickedly called it. She had her good job and her independence and her nice little apartment, and she was 27 years old, and she would soon be middle-aged, and all she could marry then, and even now, would be some liberal creep eager to live on her salary and permit her to support him. The young man now opposite her, with his urban manner and excellent income and ambitions, would never marry Sally. He would marry some sweet, untouched creature who would not stand shoulder to shoulder with him in the battle for life, but who would make him a pleasant little wife of whose decency he would be proud, and who had never heard the phrase women's liberation. Well, I suppose it served Sally right and all her deluded and pathetic sisters who sprint off to work every morning and take care of themselves and are as free as men, but deep in their deprived hearts they know how tragic they are. And I'll read the rest of it, but I wanted to stop there because they sprint off to work every morning and take care of themselves. And here is the problem, that is, it begins at a very, very young age. When we teach our girls they have to earn money, and they somehow translate that meaning I have to go outside of the home to work to earn money. But women have always earned money. You know, most women that I knew growing up in the olden days had a way of a little extra income, but they didn't have to neglect the family or leave the home to earn it. And they're taught at a very early age to work, and I believe in school too, because I noticed in schools they would have a career day, and they'd invite companies to come in and lay out their tables with all the brochures and literature on them to explain about, you know, the advantages of owning the coming into the company, and what the benefits that they would get with their paychecks, and what would be paid for and what wouldn't. And but they never ever had a homemaking table. And I asked a girl, why don't they have a homemaking table? And she says, because it's not a real job. So that's the fight that we're up against, is that the schools have the girls. The schools have everybody. That's their propagation. That's their propaganda machine there at the school, and they have all the girls, and so it's hard for us to influence them. As a matter of fact, I have tried several times through advertising and Craigslist and sending out brochures to get a class in my home on homemaking, but it doesn't get past the front desk of a school. So, who wants equality with men? She goes on to say. Girls, the men are catching on, through your sister women who have been liberated, that they have been victims for the ages of the big con game. The first thing you will know, that they will be demanding their own civil rights and equality for themselves too. It's up to you in behalf of future generations to lull them back again to become superior in their jobs. Who wants equality with men? No one woman in her right mind. Now, when this was printed, this was totally understood, but some people would pick that apart because of the sentence structure and because of the things that she said. We probably wouldn't say it like that, but it's all done to emphasize by being a little sarcastic. Remember this, she says, the strongest sign of the decay of a nation is the feminization of men and the masculinization of women. It is notable that in communist nations, women are exhorted and compelled to do what has traditionally been men's work. American women, some of them, feel triumphant when they have broken down the barricades between the work of the sexes. I hope they will still feel triumphant when some commissar forces a shovel or an axe into their soft hands and compels them to pound and cut forests and dig ditches. I hope they will be happy when a husband deserts them and they must support the children and themselves and the husband. After all, if a woman must be free, she shouldn't expect a man to be free too, should she? I hope she shouldn't object to the men being free. I hope they will feel fulfilled when they are given no more courtesies due to their sex and no kindnesses, but are kicked aside by the subways and buses and by men and jostled out of their way by men on busy sidewalks and in elevators. I hope that no man will extend mercy to them because of their obvious pregnancies, but will be rudely tell them that they have no excuse and must have a heavy day's labor at work, and they should be like communist women. I hope they will be proud when some court demands that they support delicate husbands for a lifetime and pay alimony. I hope when they look into their mirrors that they will be pleased to see exhausted and embittered faces, and that they will be consoled by their paychecks. The decay and the ruin of a nation has always lain in the hands of its women. So does its life and strength, its reverence for beauty, its mercy and kindness, and above all, its men. Now, I think they left out something in this particular edition, was that she talked about her mother being the very first feminist that ever existed, and how her mother made her do things that made her arms ache because it was such hard work. Taylor Caldwell was born in England and immigrated to the U.S. with her parents when she was a child in 1907. She was an outspoken conservative and wrote for many publications until her death in 1985. And I wish that they had left the part in there about her mother, because even before feminism occurred, she said her mother was a bossy woman who made the girls work harder than the boys in the family, and as a result, the girls got so extremely independent they ended up with careers, while the little brother was lazy. So I thought that you might like to know that, and this is something, if you can probably find it online. If I can find a good copy of it, I will put the link to it, and you can let your teenage daughters read it. But the thing is, you have to understand the expressions and figures of speech and not get caught up in some little phrase, because it's like looking at a painting. You have to stand back and look at the whole picture and not go up close and get caught up at some little brush stroke that doesn't seem right, because it all goes together. So now, if you have done a few things, I hope you can get a lot done while I talk to you today. And I would like to talk to you about making your home your comfort zone, because there has to be a place that you can go and be comfortable that's your own, that the public does not use. I think a lot of the restaurants were closed, but when you think of it, you go into a restaurant and you sit on a seat, or a bus, and you sit on a seat that 1,000 other people have sat on, and it's not as special as your own chairs and table that your own family has used, and it's just exclusively yours. So to make your home your comfort zone, think of the things that make you want to go somewhere else, and just adapt all that stuff into your home, and don't stint, don't deprive yourself of any luxury if it's for the home. I think that everyone can enjoy it, and it's better. You spend a lot of money on a vacation, but you never see it again. You can't really see your vacation, maybe a few souvenirs, but take that money that you would spend on a vacation and spend it on something for your home that makes it your comfort zone. So you might even want to make a sign that says, "This is my comfort zone." Home is my comfort zone. I'm joking about it because in one of the previous videos I was talking about how sales gimmicks came out, trying to get you involved in their companies, trying to get you involved in their MLMs, trying to get you to buy something from someone, and they'll say, step out of your comfort zone and buy it. You weren't really comfortable with it, or they wanted you to try a new philosophy, a new vain religion. Well, you should just step out of your comfort zone. And see, I've got the opposite message, and that is, find your comfort zone, establish it, and stay in it, and have stability in your life. So now, for the rest of the time, I'm going to talk a little bit about, yesterday was church, and I had mentioned before on how some ladies especially, we're very sensitive, and when we go to church, we like to have a message that's really going to build us up and help us, and sometimes we go and we feel like the fellowship wasn't quite what we wanted, and and maybe the Bible lesson wasn't as what we wanted, but I found something about homeschooling when I got into it, how much that how fulfilling that was for the family. Is it wouldn't matter if that Sunday the church didn't quite deliver what we wanted, because we could come home and discuss something else, and that the secret to having a nice worship experience is to worship all through the week. And that's why I suggest that you use these hymns that I put on my videos on my blog. And by the way, I'd really appreciate it if you would, if you want to leave a comment, if you would send it to me by my email, or leave a comment on my blog. I don't have them on my videos. But the secret is to worship at home all during the week, so that when you go to church, you don't expect them to provide all of your fulfillment. And one of the things is when you're in a group worship or a corporate worship, that worship has to be for everybody, and it can't be tailor-made to you. But you can tailor-make your own worship all during the week, and then never be disappointed again in church, because that is what you're doing to obey Hebrews 10:25, but you don't depend on it for your total spiritual satisfaction, although it is unique and necessary, and it's part of your obligation to God. If you'll keep your worship during the week also, it's not the same, and it's a life of worship at home. It's not the same as the assembly, because you don't assemble, you just sing and pray and read the Bible. And if you'll do this during the week, and I'll put that down as part of your assignment, and write that down on the blog. And that was one of the other thing that I did, was I prepared to do something after church, whether it was at home or somewhere else. We always had, it wasn't a blank day. And that's one of the mistakes we make, I think, is coming home from churches. We don't have other plans, and that is a nice quiet day, but I think it could also be spent in some endeavor that is pleasant. And I remember thinking, in one little place that we had lived for a while that was rather always sort of foggy and gloomy, and I remember thinking, well, if I go for a long, long walk, that'll make part of the day go by, after church. So I go for a long, long walk, and then I would come home, and then I'd think of something else to do, and I'd look at the clock, and it was still Sunday. So the long walks didn't make it go away. But I enjoyed myself while I was, in the worship and at church. But once it was over, it seemed rather a letdown. So that's another thing that you can do, is worship all week, daily. Have your Bible study, your prayer, and your singing, or listen. You can listen to all this online too. And the other thing is to have appointments the rest of the day on Sunday, and create some things that you'd like to do that are pleasant and quiet, and make Sunday a time to look forward to. Now, I know a lot of people who work really hard, especially the farmers. They're going to go home and take a nap. They're going to go home and sleep. So I want to go on to your homeschooling, and then maybe some refinement class. Sorry it has taken so long. I'm going to start out with I'm not going to read the history book today, but I'm going to start out with this little health, safety, and manners book by A. Becca, #1. And there's a little check sheet here with things to circle. And I wanted to talk to you about this because it is also part of refinement, this health, safety, and manners. So it says, color the object beside the correct answer. I carry pointed objects with the point down. Always, sometimes, or never. Now, one of the first lessons I ever learned, and my children ever learned from me, was to take scissors and cover the sharp point with your hand when you're handing it to someone else. Do you teach your children to do that? I don't care if you start out with the little children's that has the blunt points. It doesn't matter. You always hand it to them. And then you never run with a pair of scissors in your hands, no matter which way you're carrying them. And if you do carry them, I hand them to someone with the point this way, but you're supposed to carry them with the point down. But it's never wise to jump around on something with a pencil, as a child, with a pencil or a pair of scissors or any object, a stick, a sharp object, anything, because they could injure their faces, injure themselves terribly. So even with children's scissors that has the round points, teach them to hold it by this when they hand it to someone else. And being a stitcher and a seamstress, I always keep that in mind. Okay, and then it says, I leave my toys out where someone could trip over them. Always, sometimes, and never. That is part of the safety at home. It also makes you more refined if you're more careful with your possessions, and if you keep your possessions out of other people's sight and take care of your own things. Now, I grew up in a huge family, so I learned pretty quickly to hide all my stuff because the younger ones would just get a hold of it and ruin whatever I had. And I remember when I was about 9 years old, somebody from Avon, yeah, back in the 1950s, gave me a little fancy dish that had strawberry soaps on it. The strawberries were about that big. They smelled like strawberries. Every now and then I'll see something like that in an antique store and the cellophane is still on them. And anyway, they were so pretty, and I had taken the cellophane off and set it down on my little dresser. But while I was gone, one of the little children had taken a bite out of one. I'm sure it didn't taste very good, but kind of ruined it for me. And so I learned after that, put everything away that belongs to you. And I think that it's also dangerous to leave toys out because older people can step on them and hurt themselves. And I have a story to tell about that, but I think you've already heard it. Okay. Here's another one. When I am alone, I talk to people that I don't know. Always, sometimes, never. And so, of course, that's something that we need to be careful of, even as adults, not to talk to people we don't know. You never know when they're going to start being obsessed with you and follow you home. And children especially should not talk to anyone they don't know. I tell someone where I am going before I go anywhere. Always, sometimes, and never. Yes, I think we should all tell each other where we're going. In the home, that's the way we operate. And sometimes kids get too big for their britches and they'll think they're all grown up and they'll just leave. And you don't know where they went. But then when you get your keys and go out to the car, the first thing that child will say is, "Where are you going, Mom?" And they seem to think that they should know where you're going. And if we're all going to be grown up together, then we should all tell each other where we're going, or so that they are settled as to where you are. That's part of being part of the home. So here's another one. I keep my hands inside of the car windows. That's really important. And I still see adults, with their arm hanging outside of a window, open window on a hot day. I get out of a car on the side closest to the curb. You should never, ever allow anyone but the driver to get out on the curb side if possible, to get out on the street side if possible, especially children. Make sure they get out on the side closest to the curb. I play near the swings when they are being used. Always, sometimes, never. So you never play around playground equipment when the swing is going. It'll knock you down. I go wading or swimming by myself. Always, sometimes, never. Never. These are very important. And so this is the safety part, but it's also actually good manners. And I did read to you about those manners, but this is for children and it's homeschooling. So the homeschooling, it kind of morphs into refinement, because as you learn to live in the world God gave you and to learn about the life God has given you, that's what it is. It's learning to delight in the life that God has given you. And one of the reasons you can't have media in your life is that it goes against your sense of values. Would you let someone come into your home while you're working in your kitchen and tell you how bad the life is and how bad the world is and how everything's going to crash? Would you let them do that? Or would you feel rather disgusted after they left? I probably wouldn't invite them back. So I'm going to show you a couple of other things that that we teach in homeschool, and then the next time I come, I'm going to have my notes in a little bit more order. I wanted to have an etiquette, not etiquette, but refinement for you. So I wanted to show you what I did from last time. Is I made a little book. These are from Graphics 45, and they had a page that had squares of pictures in them, and I made a book with blank pages so that I could write down the lesson assignment from the refinement course in it, and then some notes about when I did it and how it felt, or what effect it had. And so if you want to make yourself a little notebook, you just use a hole punch and you run a ribbon through a couple times to tie it tight, and so you can keep track of that course. So today, for this class, I would like you to try a couple of physical things. Now, don't be too daunted about it. A lot of us don't think about what we're doing, but I was watching or listening to a lady, I found it on YouTube, a lady in France talking about some of the refinement habits, and she was saying, you know, when she sat down, they have a habit of sitting down to eat. You know, they don't eat while they're walking around. And so I don't know how far away we have gotten from that, and I don't know what you're doing in your home, but I mean, some people would rather just stand over the sink and eat a sandwich, or open the fridge and take something out of it and eat while the door is open. We need to get, because she was saying that it affects your digestion and your weight. And so she said everything that you eat, you sit down with a plate and eat it at a table. And that's something that people aren't doing as much. And perhaps some of it comes from old memories of sitting around the table with the family when people were being harsh, you know, harsh with the children, constantly correcting them and correcting their table manners, so that after a while you lose your appetite, or being harsh and making mealtime a very difficult time. That could be part of it. People don't like to sit across from each other or sit at the table. Other people don't like the manners of other people, so they don't want to sit near them and listen to them chew out loud. But for yourself, if you could possibly, you can find this on the web. Sit down when you eat, and eat slowly in small bites. And one thing that I noticed at tea parties, that there were some women that were very, very polite at the tea parties, or, you know, in the ladies' class, and they're drinking out of teacups. They'll take the tiniest little sip of tea, and you can't hear them swallow. But then every now and then there'll be a woman that will drink tea like she's having a big gulp drink, you know, an icy, and just drink it like chugging a glass of water down all at once, and you can hear the huge swallowing, and which I don't think is as refined as not hearing it. No one likes to hear somebody else swallow, and I think one reason that people don't like to sit down at a table with others is because of the noise they make when they eat. It's kind of like eating with a baby, isn't it? And while we don't mind it in young children, we just do not like it in adults, and especially the older you get, it just becomes more disgusting. So practice eating at the table, and also when you drink your tea or anything, swallow without making the big gulping noise. So I'll write that down as just something that you can practice. Now, of course, we know things like this, God looks on the heart, but we also want, in this book here especially, they emphasize to the children that it's polite to make other people more comfortable, that you don't try to be noticed or heard all the time, and you don't try to bring attention to yourself, and you try to be refined because you don't want to make other people feel uncomfortable or sick. So practice sipping your tea today without making big gulp sounds, and then you'll notice that you'll take less. And you can't drink. Here's the problem with a new generation coming into tea drinking. They have been drinking out of paper cups with a straw, and they have been drinking in a different way, and they're not sipping anything. So tea is to be sipped, and you don't make big swallowing sounds. And so I just wanted to bring that out to you, and I'll write that down, or if I don't write it down, you come back here and take some notes. So eat at the table, take small bites so that you don't make so much noise, and chew with your mouth closed, and take small sips of your tea or any other drink without making a huge amount of swallowing noise. Also, go back to having an appointment of something so to keep you from the news media. Have a writing appointment, a singing appointment, a listening appointment, a viewing appointment. And one of the things that I like to do is go to Pinterest and look for inspiration. And I found a sign today that said to first give thanks. The first thing you do in the morning is give thanks, but this is what it was. Little sign. Be grateful, give thanks, eat pie, and repeat. Isn't that nice? Remember Allison on the Oregon Trail and the little pocket pies she made? You know, that book written by my good friend, Miss Lily of the Valley, who's on the Pioneer Times bestseller list, like 2 months in a row. And so let me see. Make appointments with yourself today or tomorrow or this week. Make a writing appointment, whether you're going to write a newsletter, and this is my recent newsletter, and I'll read a little bit to you today too, because it has to do with your refinement class. So make appointments with yourself. Make a writing appointment, whether you're making a newsletter or whether you're writing in your journal. Make a singing appointment. Put on one of those songs that I suggested. I will try to include one in on my blog. Make a listening appointment. Listen to the Bible of your choice on YouTube being read. Make a viewing appointment. Now, one of the things I don't do that with the letting long lengths of Bible being read while I'm doing something, because I'll tune out. What I like to do is find a verse like the one that I read you this morning. I'll read that to you again, and ponder on it and dwell on it and try to make it sink in. And this is it, where Paul wrote to the young preacher Timothy. Practice these things, immerse yourself in them, so that all may see your progress. Keep a close watch on yourself and on your teaching. Now look, this is really interesting. It means watch yourself, watch how you're progressing, and let your works show where your progress is, and let your personality show how much progress you are making. Let your countenance show. It says eventually someone's going to see, you know. Practice these things. You have to practice something. Remember, Elizabeth Bennet said, I'm not as good at the piano because I would be better playing the piano had I taken the time to practice more. You have to practice something to get good at it. You know that there's a lot of people that don't want to fail so bad that they don't do it at all. And because practice means there will be failure when you practice something. But after a while, you find you can do it with ease when you practice it. Practice these things, immerse yourself in them, so that all may see your progress, and that your progress may be evident to all. Keep a close watch on yourself and on the teaching, and it's the previous things that the Apostle Paul was trying to tell him. Practice these things and immerse yourself in them, so that all may see your progress. Keep a close watch on yourself and on the teaching. So, practice these things. Try to eat once at least with on a plate at the table. Take small bites and finish a bite before you put something else in your mouth. Take small sips and don't make a gulping sound. So these are refinement things. And while we know that we're going to hear children do this, we want to mature beyond that. Then make appointments for yourself. Make a writing appointment, a singing appointment, a listening appointment, a viewing appointment. I like to go on Pinterest and view things that are inspiring to me. I remember and talk to someone without being critical. Do you think you could do that? Just this is why small talk was created, so that you could mention the weather or something and hear someone's voice, and they could hear your voice back, and the voice is very important for the development of the brain. And as people lose their hearing, they can't be stimulated by that, and so hearing is very important. So talk to someone without being a critic. And a lot of people look down on small talk, but it was created so that human beings could communicate with each other in a pleasant way. And have you ever wanted to talk to somebody, or wanted somebody to talk to you, and there was nothing available, you couldn't phone anybody? It's a dreadful feeling, isn't it? And so be happy with small talk. We don't have to always have this deep talking on deep issues. That can be very disturbing. As you know, I just read to you Taylor Caldwell's little booklet. That can be deeply disturbing. But now remember, years ago, now I haven't seen this movie in years, so I can't tell you if I recommended it anymore. Sometimes the things I thought were so funny at one time, as I grow and mature and develop more sense of values, would look at that movie and say, what? Why did I think that was so funny? It was called Tea House Over the August Moon. I believe the actor was Glenn Ford, and it may have been a black and white movie. I am not sure. But he was in the military, and he was sent to an island in the Pacific, to one of the bases of the military, and he was sent to create some kind of a social a place for the military and the community where he was in to do things and to have socials. And so he was trying to build this building, and he wanted everybody to come at a certain time and do this and do that. But at around 5 o'clock, or even earlier, all the people of the island would leave work. The ones that were hired would just leave and go. And he wanted to know what happened to everybody. Well, they all went down to the beach to watch the sunset. So he had a lot of adjusting to do, because life on that island was so different than the regimented military. So it was a comedy, and it was called Tea House Over the August Moon. And he was building a tea house, evidently, and for people to socialize. And I always was fascinated with the fact that they didn't show up for work because they had to quit and go watch the sunset. And wouldn't that be lovely? Just quit and watch the sunset. Have you ever thought of just doing that? And so whether you live in the farmer's fields like I do, or you live by the ocean, or you live in the mountains, the sunsets are always interesting. Now I'm going to read one more thing to you before I say goodbye. And I hope you're getting a lot done. And this is that poem, It Couldn't Be Done. There are two of them here. I want you to listen to these. I've read them before. But one thing you'll find out in homemaking is that a great group is not going to come alongside you and enjoy it like you do, and they are not going to approve it. And you'll go out into society and find out that the world is not supportive, and your relatives are not going to be supportive, and your friends are not going to be supportive, and sometimes even the church is not going to be supportive. So the way I look at that is, okay, be a missionary to the church. Be an example to the church, and bring them alongside of you eventually by sticking with it, and by doing excellently, and by having that joyful countenance that comes from this wonderful comfort zone that you're creating for yourself, so you can be a missionary to your own church. So this is for the naysayers. I would like to talk more about these people, these naysayers. And it's called It Couldn't Be Done. By Edgar Albert Guest. Now, he was the America's poet that wrote, he was English also, just like Taylor Caldwell, and he moved to America. I don't know what year it was. I don't have his dates here, what date it was, but it was after World War II, or it might have been World War I. And he knew that, and he worked for a newspaper, and he knew that the American people would need to bring their minds up to catch up to the optimism and the opportunity that would be available to them now. And this is what we need too. There's opportunity to be a good homemaker and to get others interested in it. But in my opinion, I think everybody has to reach a point where they have their own conviction. And if you're trying to talk them into being a homemaker, you'll just have to support them and be a support group for them and talk them into it all the time. So it's better for everyone to reach their own determination and conviction. So somebody said that it couldn't, and this just shows you, this poem shows you that this fighting the attitude, the sour-dour, can't do anything attitude, has always been a problem with people who want to get something done and who are more optimistic. Because here was a poem written, I believe, in the 1940s. Somebody said that it couldn't be done, but he, with a chuckle, replied that maybe it couldn't, but he would be one who wouldn't say so till he tried. So he buckled right in with the trace of a grin on his face. If he worried, he hid it. He started to sing as he tackled the thing that couldn't be done, and he did it. Somebody scoffed, "Oh, you'll never do that. At least no one ever has done it." But he took off his coat, and he took off his hat, and the first thing we knew, he'd begun it. With a lift of his chin and a bit of a grin, without any doubting or quit it, he started to sing as he tackled the thing that couldn't be done, and he did it. There are thousands to tell you it cannot be done. There are thousands to prophesy failure. There are thousands to point out to you one by one the dangers that wait to assail you. Just take off your coat. Just buckle right in with a bit of a grin. Just take off your coat and go to it. Just start in to sing as you tackle the thing that cannot be done, and you'll do it. So that's why I say make an appointment. You think it can't be done, and you think that you're waiting for someone else to come along and rescue you in some endeavor that you have to do in the home, just start right in and do it. And here's another one written by someone else. If you think you are beaten, you are. If you think you dare not, you don't. If you'd like to win but you think you can't, it's almost certain you won't. If you think you'll lose, you're lost. For out in the world we find success begins with a fellow's will. It's all in the state of mind. If you think you are outclassed, you are. You've got to think high to rise. You've got to be sure of yourself before you can ever win a prize. To me, winning the prize is to have that clean section or the redecorated or rearranged home, or something more convenient at home because of the work that I did. Life's battles don't always go to the stronger or faster man, but sooner or later, the man who wins is the man who thinks he can. So I'm going to leave you with this verse again. It's 2 Timothy chapter 4, verses 15 and 16. Practice these things, immerse yourself in them, so that all may see your progress, or your progress may be evident to all. Keep a close watch on yourself and on the teaching. Persist in this, for by doing so you will save both yourself and your hearers. That's the Apostle Paul talking to a young preacher. Ladies, I hope you got something done and that I did leave you on a high note. I've got a lot to tell you. I didn't get around to my newsletter, but I think I gave you enough to do today. And so I hope you will make appointments for yourself, and you'll go back and listen to that part and make a list and create a little notebook out of it and try to work on that today. I'll talk to you later. Bye.